It's desirable to have a flying mode for the player. We'll accomplish this by writing code to toggle the flying mode and an axis input to move up and down while flying. It's also nice to have some kind of feedback, such as sound, when you're adding or removing blocks. Our objectives for this module are to use a variable to count the number of taps to start flying. We'll use the spacebar for that. We'll also respond to movement input on the z-axis when we're flying. Finally, we'll add sounds when adding blocks and removing blocks in the game. To get started, open up the BP block player. Locate the code that we previously wrote for jumping. Now, flying and jumping are actually tied together because we jump using the same key that we're going to use to fly with. Let's find the jump code, and in fact, I see we have some uncommented code here for moving forward and right. I'm going to take care of that bit of housekeeping by selecting it and tapping C, move forward, and move right. There we go. And sorry, let's go back over to the jump. It just drives me crazy when I leave code undone like that or uncommented. All right, so back here in the jump. When we jump, we're going to count the number of times we tap the jump key, and if we've tapped it twice within a certain period of time, we'll start flying. We'll need two variables for that. So let's create the variables. We'll click Add Variable, and the first variable is called the Fly Tap Counter, and that will be type int or integer. And we'll need another variable, so click Add Variable, and this will be the Fly Tap Delay, or how long we'll wait to delay between taps before we start flying. And this is going to be a float. And let's click Compile. Let's set the default value for the fly tap delay to 0.2 seconds. You can adjust this later if you need a longer time to delay or you feel it needs less time to delay. So when we jump, when we hit the spacebar to jump, we're going to start counting the number of taps. Let's drag out the fly tap counter, do a get on that, and we're going to increment its value by 1. So drag off of the fly tap counter and type in ++ and get the increment int node and hook that up. Then we'll go into a branch and we'll check whether or not the number of taps is greater than or equal to 2. So B for a branch, and then drag off of the result value of the fly tap counter of incrementing it by 1, and type in greater than, and select greater than or equal to, and use 2, the number of times we have to tap in order to start flying. Use that condition in the branch. Let's take care of the false part of that branch first, and don't forget to hook up that execution wire right there. So for the false, we'll have a delay. In other words, we haven't tapped twice yet, and we'll use the fly tap delay as the duration for the delay, and that's going to get hooked up to the false pin. And we'll delay for that amount of time, and if that amount of time elapses, we'll set the false, or the fly tap counter, drag that out and do a set on it, and we'll set that back to 0 if we have not started flying yet in that amount of time. If we're not flying and we double tap the spacebar, we want to start flying. And if we are flying and we double tap the spacebar, we want to stop flying. We'll use a flip-flop node for that. So drag off of the true and type in flip-flop. And this great node, I love this node, the first time it runs, we'll execute pin A, and the second time it runs, we'll execute pin B, and then pin A and pin B, and so on and so forth. And it's just a really useful node for this kind of code. So we'll need the character movement component, drag that out and drag off of that, and set the movement mode. And we're going to need 2 of these, so select the set movement mode, duplicate it with Control W, Make sure to hook up the target for that. So when pin A fires, we'll change the new movement mode to flying. And then the next time, when pin B fires, we'll change the new movement mode back to walking. And that's it. That'll start us flying and stop us from flying. Now we're almost ready to test this. I'm going to select all that code, hit C, and type in flying. I know it's connected to jumping, but it's kind of separate code. And let's confirm that we've got our input set for moving up and down while we're flying. So click on Edit, Project Settings, go down to the Input section, and observe that we have a Move Up axis mapping. And when the space bar is held down, the axis value will be 1. And when the left shift is held down, the axis value will be -1. You'll see how that's used in just a moment. Close out of the project settings. Right click and type in Move Up. And we want the axis event, move up. Scroll in. And all we need for this is to add movement input. So right click, add movement input, and hook that up. And we're going to add movement input in the Z axis, up or down. And you'll see why up or down in just a second. So we're going to change the world direction to Z of 1. For the scale value, the axis value, it'll be 1 when we hold down the space bar, -1 when we hold down the left shift key. So if we're holding down the left shift key, it will apply that scale value to this world direction, and it will become -1. And the space bar has a value, an axis value of 1. It'll become 1. So let's drag around that. Press C for comment. Movement while flying is a good comment for that. Compile and save. And again, the code doesn't work till you test it. Let's go back to the map. Click play. And we can still place some blocks. And let's double tap the space bar. Now we're flying. And hold down the shift key to go down, and space bar to go up, and double tap the space bar to stop flying. So now that we've got the flying code all set, let's go back to the BP block player, and let's add some feedback in the form of sounds when we're placing blocks and removing blocks. So find the section where we're spawning a block, and at the very end of that, you'll see where we spawn an actor, we have a return value. And what we should do is test if that return value is valid, meaning an actor was actually spawned. Because of the collision handling, we may not spawn a block. It may have been colliding with another block and it didn't get spawned. So we need to check if it actually got spawned. Let's drag off of the return value and type in is valid. And I always get confused which one I want. Oh, it's not that one. So is valid, drag off of that. Is valid. We want the one with the question mark. There we go. And we're going to execute that. And if it is valid, we want to play some sound at location. So right click and type in play sound at location. We need to furnish a sound asset. We have one of those set for us. So on the is valid, hook that up to the play sound at location. And for the sound asset, we want to use the place block sound. And for the location, to go all the way over here and get the attach location where the block is being attached to, and drag that over here. And you might want to use some reroute nodes. Again, that's double clicking. Those are really handy to neaten things up. There we go. And that will play the place block sound at that location where we added the block. And for the remove block, after we've destroyed the actor, we can drag off of that. Again, we're in the remove block code if you didn't see that. Block, destroy actor, we'll drag off of that. Play sound at location. And I'll drag the comment out around that. That'll be the remove block sound. And for the location, we'll take the location of the clicked on block, the block that we clicked on, and hook that up. For the location, double click to add a reroute node. There we go. And let's test it. We'll pick a different block. There we go. So there's our add block sound. And when we right click to remove, we are playing the remove block sound. In this module, we used a variable to count the number of taps on the spacebar to start flying and also to stop flying. We added some input movement in the z-axis when we were flying, when the spacebar was held down, or we would go up, and when the left shift was held down, we would go down, all in the z-axis. We also added sounds when adding a block or removing a block.